My patience has its bounds.
This is finished!
She is no queen.
We have endured much.
We'll join them glorious in battle.
And though we languish, we will not lose heart.
Rhaenyra has 6 dragons, a crown, and an army that just surrendered without a fight. By every measure that should matter in this war, she is winning. So why does episode 5 feel like the moment everything she has built starts collapsing in on itself? Because the fire that's about to consume Tumbleton isn't an accident, and it isn't bad luck. It's the direct result of a mistake Rhaenyra made herself weeks ago when she chose to look merciful instead of being decisive. And once that town burns, there will be no talking her way out of what it means for the rest of her reign. Script. Let's talk about the trap Rhaenyra built with her own hands, because that's exactly what Tumbleton has become. A quiet market town, holding hundreds of hostages, sitting in the middle of a war that was supposed to already be over. And the man most likely to set it on fire isn't some nameless enemy soldier. He's a man wearing her colors, riding one of her dragons, following orders that trace all the way back to a decision she made in a throne room weeks earlier. When Orwyle Hightower surrendered his army rather than face 3 dragons, Rhaenyra had a choice. Daemon wanted every one of those soldiers turned to ash on the spot. No mercy, no second chances. War handled the way war has always been handled by people who actually want to win it. Rhaenyra chose differently. She let them walk. And that single decision, the one that made her look wise and merciful in front of the realm, is the same decision that planted a bomb in Tumbleton with a lit fuse nobody has bothered to put out. Because instead of marching home quietly like they promised, Orwyle's men did the opposite. They seized the town. They took hostages. Women, children, merchants, ordinary people who had nothing to do with this war. All of them now trapped behind walls, waiting for a queen who has been too busy with coronations and banquets and imposter princes to even look their way. This is the cost of mercy without follow-through. You spare the soldiers, but you don't secure the peace. You win the battle in the throne room and lose control of the battlefield entirely. And here's where it gets personal, because this isn't just about strangers trapped behind a wall. Hugh Hammer's wife and her brother are among the hostages. Hugh is a dragon seed, a blacksmith who woke up one day riding Vermithor, one of the oldest and most powerful dragons alive. He didn't ask for greatness. It was handed to him violently, and ever since, Rhaenyra's court has treated him like an inconvenience instead of a weapon that could win or lose this entire war. He asked for a home. She gave him a house on the wrong hill, the kind meant for merchants and minor clergy, not a man who commands a beast capable of leveling a city. He has been humiliated, sidelined, quietly reminded again and again that his blood doesn't matter as much as the blood already sitting on the throne. And now, his family is trapped in a town that Rhaenyra might soon order him to destroy. Sit with that for a second. The most disrespected man in her service might be handed the exact order that burns his own wife alive. What happens to a man like that when he's given that choice? What happens to the war Rhaenyra thinks she's winning when the person she needs most stops caring whether she wins it at all? This is where the books stop being background trivia and start being a warning. In Fire and Blood, this exact situation ends in one of the darkest moments of the entire Dance of the Dragons. Hugh Hammer, furious and out of options, burns Tumbleton to the ground with dragonfire. Thousands die. Many of them are the very hostages he was supposedly sent to save. It becomes remembered as one of the worst atrocities of the war, a stain on Rhaenyra's reign that never fully washes out, even though she never personally gave the order to slaughter civilians. The show has already been building toward this. They gave Hugh a wife who doesn't exist in the source material. They gave him a reason to be desperate. And then they placed that wife directly inside the blast radius of a massacre history has already written. That is not an accident. That is not subtle. When a story invents a character and drops her into the exact spot where history says a disaster is coming, that's a loaded gun sitting on the table in the first act. The only real question left is who pulls the trigger, and whether Rhaenyra could have stopped it before it ever got this far. Because let's be honest about what she actually did instead of dealing with Tumbleton. She sent Daemon off to threaten Lady Jane Eyre for soldiers. She let an imposter prince sit in her dungeon while she debated what to do with him. She hosted a banquet, handed out grain to the small folk, and let herself believe that looking generous was the same thing as being in control. Meanwhile, Orwell's remaining men are sitting inside Tumbleton with absolutely nothing left to lose. They already know their side lost the war. They already watched their own lord get humiliated for trying to surrender peacefully. So when a queen with 6 dragons finally turns her attention back to a hostage crisis she's been ignoring for days, what exactly is she supposed to do? Does she negotiate with men who have nothing left to bargain with? Does she send in soldiers and risk a bloodbath in the streets? Or does she finally do what Demon has wanted since episode 1 and simply burn the town down, hostages included, because that's the fastest way to end it? Every single option in front of her is bad, and that is exactly the kind of position that turns a merciful queen into the very thing she swore she would never become. Now zoom out, because Tumbleton isn't the only fire waiting to be lit, and it might not even be the biggest one. Remember the carved raven Rhaenyra found in the fake Aegon's room? Ravens have always meant something in this story, messages moving in the shadows where nobody can see them coming. The real Aegon the Younger is still out there somewhere, hidden away by Orwell before his surrender. And Rhaenyra has no idea. She thinks she's holding a valuable hostage, a legitimate claimant she can control and eventually ship off to the Wall. In reality, she's holding a terrified, blackmailed decoy, while the actual prince with real Targaryen blood and a real claim to the throne is sitting somewhere completely outside her control. Every decision she makes based on the belief that she has the real prince is a decision built on a lie, and lies like that do not stay buried forever. Somebody talks, somebody gets careless, or somebody simply shows up one day riding a dragon nobody expected, and the entire story Rhaenyra has been building about her own legitimacy collapses in front of the same small folk she just spent an episode trying to win over with bread and grilled rat. Then there's the High Septon, who already told her no once. 2 monarchs cannot be anointed at the same time, and as far as the faith is concerned, nobody has confirmed that Aegon the Elder is actually dead. Rhaenyra is sitting on a throne without the blessing of the only religious authority that matters in all of Westeros. That is not a problem that disappears because she handed out some grain. The same crowd cheering for her outside the Sept was cheering for Aegon just weeks earlier. Loyalty in King's Landing has never meant more than who currently looks like they're winning. The moment cracks start showing in Rhaenyra's rule, and Tumbleton is exactly the kind of crack that could show fast. That same crowd could turn on her just as easily as they turn toward her. Meanwhile, Alicent is somewhere in that castle grieving a son who might not even be dead, forced to watch a decoy child get shipped away in his place. And if there's one thing this story has taught us about Alicent Hightower, it's that grief tends to make her dangerous rather than passive. She has already shown she's willing to betray her own son once. That doesn't mean she's finished playing this game. And let's not forget what's happening far away from King's Landing, because Aemon Targaryen is still alive, recovering at Harrenhal under the care of a woman who wants nothing more than to become Lady of Harrenhal herself. Alice Rivers has already proven she's willing to bend reality to get what she wants, and now she has the second most dangerous dragon rider in all of Westeros healing in her bed. When Aemond wakes up, and he will wake up, he's going to come back angrier than before, riding Vhagar, the single most powerful dragon in the entire war. Rhaenyra spent this stretch of episodes worrying about coronations and imposters, while the man who actually killed her son quietly recovers just far enough away that she can't see the threat building. That isn't strength. That's tunnel vision. And tunnel vision is exactly how queens lose wars they thought they had already won. Add to that the growing resentment from Ulf and Hugh, the 2 dragon seeds she's supposed to be rewarding for their loyalty. Ulf wanted the Targaryen name and got laughed at instead. He wanted a castle and got a copper coin and a warning. These 2 men are sitting on 2 of the most powerful weapons in this entire war, and Rhaenyra keeps treating them like disposable soldiers instead of the kingmakers they actually are. History has already shown us that dragon seeds who feel disrespected do not stay loyal forever. All it takes is one better offer from the other side, one insult too many, and the entire balance of power in this war shifts overnight. So here's the theory, and here's why episode 5 might be the moment everything finally falls apart. Rhaenyra is going to have to make a decision about Tumbleton, and there is no version of that decision that doesn't cost her something enormous. If she orders the town burned to end the hostage crisis quickly, she becomes exactly what she swore she would never be, a ruler willing to kill innocent women and children to solve a political problem. the same accusation she's thrown at Aegon and the Greens since episode 1. If she hesitates, if she tries to negotiate or wait it out, she risks losing control of an already volatile situation involving an angry dragon seed whose entire family is trapped inside those walls. And if the books are any indication of where this story is headed, Hugh Hammer might not wait for her order at all. He might act completely on his own, out of grief or rage or desperation, and burn that town himself. If that happens, it will not matter that Rhaenyra never gave the command. History will remember it as her mistake, made on her watch, under her rule, carried out by a man she personally humiliated, and then handed a dragon powerful enough to erase an entire town from the map. This is the trap that has been building since the moment she let Orwyle surrender back in episode 4. Mercy sounds noble inside a throne room. Mercy looks very different when it's sitting inside a besieged town, slowly running out of options, waiting on a queen who's distracted by coronations and imposters and empty coffers to finally pay attention. Every ruler in this story has faced this exact same test, the difference between what looks right and what actually works, and every single one of them has failed it eventually. Viserys failed by refusing to make hard choices until it was too late. Aegon failed by making violent choices without thinking them through at all. Rhaenyra swore she would be different, that she would rule with both strength and mercy, judicious instead of cruel, but judicious rulers still have to choose. And every choice she has avoided making about Tumbleton is a choice that is about to be made for her by circumstances she can no longer control. There's also the question of what Orwyle's remaining forces actually want, because this isn't a random act of desperation. Taking hostages is a negotiating tactic, which means somebody inside that town is waiting for an offer to come through. What if that offer isn't aimed at Rhaenyra at all? What if it's aimed straight at Hugh? A disrespected dragon seed with a wife trapped in enemy hands is exactly the kind of person the Greens would try to turn. Promise him his family's safety. Promise him a title that actually means something. Promise him the respect he has never once received from the queen he currently serves. It wouldn't take much. Hugh has already shown he's one insult away from breaking, and Rhaenyra keeps handing him insults disguised as generosity. If Orwyle's people are smart, and this war has shown us plenty of them are, they are not sitting in that town simply waiting to die. They're waiting for the exact right moment to make Hugh Hammer an offer Rhaenyra never saw coming. And that's really the heart of Rhaenyra's biggest mistake, the thing that ties every thread of this episode together. She has been so focused on looking merciful, so focused on being remembered as the just and judicious queen her father always wanted her to be, that she has failed to notice how dangerous unresolved mercy actually is. A war doesn't end just because you stop fighting it directly. Orwyle's surrender didn't end anything. It simply moved the violence somewhere she couldn't see it happening, somewhere it's had days now to fester into something far worse than a clean battlefield victory ever could have been. If Tumbleton burns in episode 5, and every piece the show has placed on the board strongly suggests it won't be because Rhaenyra ordered a massacre. It will be because she let a problem sit unsolved for just long enough for someone angrier and more desperate than her to solve it in the worst way imaginable. That is the cost of mercy without follow-through. That is the cost of a queen who wants to be remembered as good without doing the harder work of actually being decisive. And if the history books are right about what happens at Tumbleton, Rhaenyra is about to learn that lesson in the most devastating way possible, one she will never be able to take back. Because here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. Rhaenyra keeps trying to manage this war from behind a desk. She's taking petitions, hosting banquets, handing out titles, trying to run a kingdom the way her father once did, through careful diplomacy and patient authority. But her father never had 6 dragons, a hostage crisis, and an active civil war happening all at the same time. The tools that worked for a peacetime king simply do not work for a queen fighting for her life. Every hour she spends deciding who gets a house on which hill is an hour she isn't spending figuring out where Aegon actually is, or whether Aemond has already woken up at Harrenhal, or what's really happening right now inside the walls of Tumbleton. Daemon has been telling her this since episode 1. In his own blunt, brutal way, war does not leave room for half measures. And Rhaenyra keeps choosing half measures again and again, because she's terrified of becoming the kind of ruler people whisper about with fear instead of respect. That fear is understandable, It might even be admirable in a different story. But this isn't a story about admirable choices. This is a story we already know the ending to if you've read the books. And the ending is not kind to rulers who hesitate. Every decision Rhaenyra has delayed making, the fate of the fake prince locked in her dungeon, the punishment for what's happening in Tumbleton, the truth about where Aegon really is a decision that is going to get made anyway. Just not by her. It's going to get made by Hugh Hammer's rage, and by the time Rhaenyra realizes what she let happen, Tumbleton won't be a hostage crisis anymore. It will be a grave,